Okay. So what I normally do whenever I decide to pick up something is I just do a tutorial. So it's way easier than trying to read through the documentation because you get two benefits. One, you get the benefit of seeing someone else's code, right? You see someone else's code, but you get the explanation with it. And that's a good way to learn is by watching someone else's code and trying to break it down and figure out how they did it. But instead of trying to figure it out and racking your brain around it, you just have them explain it to you. So it becomes so much easier. And then two is like, you physically do. It's like writing something out. For me, when I say it and write it, I remember it more. So it's the same thing. If I type it out and I'm following along and I'm saying it, what he says, then it becomes easier stuck in my brain. So this is how I pick up stuff. And then on top of that, I do it like 2-3 times. So for this one, I'm doing, what is this? Node and Express. All right, it's an example of how I would do it, right? So I would do this one, this 10 hours, right? I do this 3 times or 2 times, depending on how I feel. And then I'll try to stick with the same teacher and do it again because then you pick up their code and style and the way they teach. You pick up that as well. So if you do it once, twice, 3 times, right? And then until you can do it, you basically just do it until you can run a basic application on your own, like a Thorough Express application or a Node, or a Node application or a React application by yourself, the basic boilerplate. If you can do that, you get a basic application, then the rest is easier because then you can just Google this, do that. That's fine. But it's really that basic starting point. You have to kind of, I'll say memorize, but you kind of get down to where it's like second nature. So I'm normally a front end. I can't say that. Whatever. But I wanted to do this because I never really did a full out tutorial for Node. So I'm going to do it for Node. I'll probably do this one at least twice. I don't know if I'll do it more than that. But let me see. Start with it. Okay. And then I got the code spaces because this is easier than trying to pull it to the actual machine. It's a lot quicker to just throw up a code space. Let's move this down here. Here. And then actually let me get it put over here. Yeah. Then I started.
Press package. Then we need to initialize it. So we go with app, and that is equal to express. And
I did it already. What is this? Tasks, app. I think I did this part. Yeah. Express, require express, initialize express, and save it to the variable, the app variable. Okay.
we invoke it. And then, unlike the previous examples, we'll actually set up a variable by the name of port. And for time being, we'll hard code this to 3000, but eventually there's going to be more code. And I'll talk about the reasoning later. So for now, just set up the variable and we'll be in good shape. And in here, we need to go with app.listen, of course. And first thing we pass in is the port. And the second is the console log. So we go here with some kind of text. And I'm going to go with server is listening on port. And then, of course,
yeah, that's very common. You'll see that almost every tutorial you'll see a Node.
We pass in the port value. And I always like to add those 3 dots as well. So I'll do it in this case. And then I'll open up my console. The moment I have server is listening on port.
I'm going to skip a bit because I did some of this already.
So I'll save it here. I'll navigate and then we'll go. Then, of course, we are off to the great start. Beautiful. And once we have the bones in place, next, let's take a look at our application so we can decide what routes eventually we're going to have. And I can see that I'm getting all my tasks. So there will definitely be a get request that gets me all my items. Now I can also create a new task. So there will be a post request that can create a new task. Now we can also delete one. So there will be a route for that. And if we click on edit, we open up a new page. And in here, we get info about a specific route. So there will be a get request that just gets me info about one single task. And also, we'll have the ability to edit. So if I change the completed from true to false, And if I successfully edit that, then if I go back to the tasks, of course, in here, I don't see the check mark, which means that I successfully edited the task. And what that means is that there's also a route for the update. And in summary, our routes are going to look something like this, where there will be a get request on API version 1 and then tasks. So this will get all the tasks. Then there will be a post request on API version 1 tasks. Again, the same URL, however, the method is different. So totally different functionality. In this case, we'll create a new task. And then we have get route with params. So with the ID of the task that gets us that single task. And soon it direct everybody to API and then version 2, 3, or whatever. And while we're still on that same note, why don't we navigate to a Hacker News one, the one that I showed you previously with Algolia, and you'll notice exactly the same setup.
So what's explained here is the versioning, the API slash V1, V2, V3. So when there's a new API 1.2, you just switch the versioning for your request, and it's a lot easier. And you see this in production as well when working with different companies.
Essentially, they go with domain and then / and then API and then version number 1. And that leads me to my next point, where if you're ever in doubt or if you're just interested on different setups, just check out the different APIs. There's tons of APIs out there, and you can just look for one, then take a look at that. But why do we go here with get and then tasks? Then we have the post and the same tasks, and then for get, patch, and delete, we go to the tasks, but then we're looking for the colon. Why isn't this written in a different way where we're just looking for a single task or something along those lines? And to give you a short answer, that is a convention. But since there's more to it, I want to actually cover that in a few videos. So I want to set up the basic routes with just some simple responses. Then I want to open up the Postman and do a little bit of setup over there. And then right before we start setting up the database, I actually want to spend one video on just talking about the convention. And then lastly, if you remember in tutorial, we worked frustrating to you, but that's also going to be something that we will cover a bit later once we have already a working application, because that way I believe that I can give you a solid example of the differences between the put and patch. That's about it for the general route structure. So now let's start implementing it. Not bad, not bad. I think we're good with the general structure. So now let's start implementing it. And one routes folder. So say setup in the routes, we need to look for the express router. As far as the setup in the route.
So now we're setting up the controller and the routes. I think you're focusing now just on the routes.
We need to look for the express router. So say const express, and that is equal to require. And then again, we'll look for express. And this should be a refresher because we did cover that at the end of the Express tutorial. So just to jog your memory, if we go back to Express tutorial, and then more specifically, we'll look for the final one, the file 13, the router people shows a basic router example. And essentially we have two options. We can either go with a router get and then add all the controllers one by one, or we can actually chain them together, where we go with a router and then use a route. So this is going to be the main route, in our case, API version 1, and then tasks. And then we chain get and post. And I think I'm going to go with this setup. So first, let's start by setting up the router. And that is equal to express and then a router. We invoke it. And then eventually we'll import controllers. But for now, of course, we don't have any. So let's just leave that one blank. And we'll go with router, then route, like I said, then /, and then I want to go with get method. And for time being, I'll just hard code the response over here. So say rec and res dot and send. And like I said, we'll just start simply So say all items. Now let's save that one. And then all the way in the bottom, we want to go with module exports, and that is equal to our router. So now back in the app.js, we want to import the router, we want to import our tasks, and we want to set up the middleware. So in here, let's just go with const and then routes, and that is equal to require. And then, like I said, we're going to be looking in the routes folder, and then more specifically, we're looking for the tasks. And then right after this hello, and don't worry, we'll change that one a little bit later. For time being, it can just stay the way it is. We'll go with app.use, and then of course, what route are we looking for? Well, we want to go with API, then version 1, and then tasks. So that's going to be that root route for the tasks router. And then we just want to go with our routes. And you know what? Let's just change it around. My bad. For some reason, I went with the routes. Let's just call it tasks. I believe it's going to make a bit more sense. And
Okay. Let's go. All right, now let's grab that as well. Okay. Let's go here. Const. Ooh. Let's see, what is that? App.use. Okay. App.use. When we make the route, what was that route? API version 1 task. So it's API v1 tasks. Okay. And then we pass to the task here. Task like such. Alright.
let's just call it tasks. I believe it's going to make a bit more sense. And since we'll be sending JSON from our application, for example, when we're creating a new task, and since I want to access that data in my routes, what we need to do, of course, is get middleware that is built into Express.
Actually, another way I like to do when it comes to learning is like building. I just want to say this before I forget. Like building smaller applications and doing it a lot of times. Like build a to-do list for React or Node or whatever you're trying to learn. Next, or whatever, and do it like 5 or 6 times. But keep building it from scratch. Build it, but it's a small application, right? Do that real quick. Build it up, do it again, build it up, and then you get the basics down real quick. This one, I like to do like, I like to do both. Both they have their place, right? But this one, you get more. I guess you get more a better understanding of what you're actually doing. You know, I mean, you can do with the other one, but you get that I say someone else's experience as well as what you learn. So their experience and why they use it, you get a bit of that. So you kind of, it's like almost like a virtual mentorship. You know, they'll drop some gems that, you know, you may not pick up on except for years of experience with that technology. So that's kind of why I like to do this one as well. So let me go back to this again.
Task. And since I want to access that data in my routes, what we need to do, of course, is get middleware that is built into Express. Task and from our application. For example, when we're creating a new task, and since I want to access that data in my routes, what we need to do, of course, is get middleware that is built into Express. And that middleware is Express JSON. So above the routes, what we need to do, of course, is get middleware. For example, when we're creating a new task.
I'm rerunning it to listen to it again to make sure, like, to fully comprehend what he's saying. So I suggest you do the same thing we do yours.
And since I want to access that data in my routes, what we need to do, of course, is get middleware that is built into Express. And that middleware is Express JSON. So above the routes, we'll go here and I'll try to spell this correctly since that is always an issue. Hopefully this is correct, middleware. And then we'll just go with app.use, and eventually we'll set up the static one as well. But since at the moment we have barely any routes, I'm just gonna go with express and JSON. If you remember, if we don't use this, then we won't have that data in rec.body. So I'll save it here.
Right, you have to use this in order to get the data. Right, I've tried before. When you first learn, that's one of the first mistakes you make, not using that middleware. So let's just do the same thing he did here. Middleware, and then let's do use express.json. Express.json. What else? Okay.
And I'll leave the comments just so we all are on the same page. And before I test it out in the browser, let me just double check. So I'm using the middleware where I'm saying that I'm looking for API version 1 and then tasks. And then I pass in my router, my tasks router. And then in the router, effectively, I have this route path, which just matches whatever I pass over here. So again, I go with API version 1 and then tasks. And then I set up a get route where I manually pass in my controller. And here I just say res.send and I pass in a string of all items. And it looks about right. So pass in a string.
Yeah, because normally the controller would be here. So the routes pass to the controller, and the controller would handle the UI or whatever you're trying to do. But you wouldn't directly handle what you're trying to render for the client in the router. This is just like temporary. So let me go back here because I think I had I was testing it out at that here. And then let's go to port. Yeah, I'll worry about that later. Terminal, okay. Come here, tasks, / all items. Okay, I think we're good. Okay.
Of all items.
Let me rerun this. Start. Oops. Format. Right. Yeah. Start. Why do I keep doing that? Right. Yeah, what is this? Start. Alright, now. There we go. Let's get rid of that one. Yeah, that's okay.
And it looks about right. So let me go here and we're going to go with localhost 3000 since it's a get request. Of course, we can access it. Again, API version 1 and then tasks. And we should see a string of all items. And if we do, then of course, we're heading in the right direction. So the last thing that I want to do in this video.
Yeah, it's just because of how I have this port set up. So I have to configure my port in order to get it that way. Let's see, could I do this thing with this? I don't know, I'm not really familiar with it. I gotta get used to it. Let's see. What was it? API. See if it'll be the same. Nice. See. All right. We're good.
Video is to first close my express tutorial one, and then in the controllers we want to create a new file and we'll call this tasks.js. And again, just to jog your memory, the whole deal why we're setting up separate routes and separate controllers, because if I'll try to jam everything in app.js, it's going to get messy pretty fast. So what I want to do right now is take this logic and place it in a separate file, because eventually, of course, there will be way more logic than just res.send. So I'm going to go to my controllers, and effectively I want to create my function, the controller function, and I'm just going to go with const get all and then tasks, and I'll set it up as an R function. I'm looking for rec and res, and functionality will be exactly the same, res.send, and we're just going to go with all and then items. And then we're going to go with module exports. And since I'm going to add more functions in here, I'll right away export it as an object. So,
right. We can have more functions export with the object. Okay, let's go do that. Tabs, let's go to this is routes. This is controllers, new file, tasks.js. What did I do? Wait a minute. Okay, tasks.js. Okay, and then I do const get all. What is it? Routes? Is that what he said? Get all routes. Task. Yeah, I know something was off. Tasks. Get all tasks. That would be a arrow function. Here, and then let's go here. Let's take that out. Right. Oh, we just do this. Let's just be lazy. Let's be lazy about this. There we go. Here, and then here, modules dot exports, and then we will exports. Then we will equals an object and throw it in here. Oop. 1 second. Let's see. Okay. Module dot exports functions in here. Or get all task, res.send, all items, get task.
we'll say get
Res, we have request here. Here, I have to change it out. But then we'll just import the other.
all tasks. That's when I'm exporting. And then back in the routes, of course, I want to access it. So I'll say here that I wanted the structure get all tasks from, and of course, we need to require it. And in this case, we're looking in the controllers. So I'm going to go 2 levels up. I'm looking for controllers and then more specifically task. So instead of hard coding this value, of course, I'll just pass it in and I'll say get all tasks.
Yep. Okay. Stop it. Const. What was it? Yeah. Get all tasks here. I think about React. Require. Let's do. What does it say? William Routes. Oh, that's why. Buddy boy. Let's take that out of there. Let's go to here. Wait a minute, I was right. Getting confused, yeah. Task routes, yeah. I'm getting confused here. Okay. Routes, and then we want to do is go back, and then we want to go to controller / tasks. Let's go back here, equals. Here, and then here. I want to take this. Let's change that up.
course, I'll just pass it in and I'll say get all tasks.
Try it out. Why is that slow? You're scaring me now. Let's do this. Let's rerun this. That way I get that fresh port. That fresh port here. For a reason, it takes 10 years in a day. Okay. You know why it's taking so long, so just wait on it, I guess. Make sure I did everything right. Okay, so we continue from here.
And I'll say get all tasks. And if I go back to my URL and if I can still see all items, then of course we are in good shape. And let me just test it out where I'll change this around and I'll say all items from the file.
Step into Wix Studio,
the
new web creation.
And then if we go back, yep, we still have the correct result. And with this in place, now we can set up the same basic structure for the rest of the routes as well. Beautiful. And in the same fashion, let's set up the rest of the controllers. So we have the get one. Now I want to create one for the post, one for get, but that's going to be a single item. Then we also have one for patch and one for delete. And pretty much in all of them, the setup is going to be exactly the same as far as functionality. I'll just send back and I'll say what the controller is doing. Since, of course, we haven't connected to the database or anything like that. And I just need to come up with a name. In my case, I'm going to go with create task. And again, we have rec and res. And then we want to copy and paste since I want to.
Let's see. So I just want to copy this and do it again here. 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 So let me actually change this. Create this. Create task.
Speed this up and I'll just say create task. Create task, and why don't we change this one around and we'll say get all tasks. Now we want to copy and paste, and we'll have three more. We'll have one for getting the task, so get task, and here we'll say get single task. Then we'll have one for updating, and that's exactly how we'll call it. We'll say update task. And the same is going to be over here. And then the last one, of course, will be delete and then task. And you guessed it, we also need to change the text. And now, of course, we want to place that in the same object. So let's go with create task, then get task. Then we have update task. And last one is delete task. And then back in the routes, of course, we want to import them. So say here, create task, get task, then update task and delete one. And now we just need to set up the routes. If we take a look at the app.js, these two, the get and post, are going to go to API version 1 and then tasks. And then the rest of them are going to be with the ID params. So,
okay. So there, I want to stop here. I'm going to break these off and do like one each day. So just 30 minutes each, maybe more, depending on I'm feeling, but break them off each day. And doing like that. Just make sure you commit your changes and push them if you're following along like I'm doing, so you won't lose your progress. All right. See you next one.